The NBA pretty active this week in terms of trade deadline stuff going on and buyout season. Some injuries, some players not moving, and Kevin out running half marathons. It's been a busy week for all of us. We are going to get into those, but first, I wanted to get into the one move for our warm-up jumper here that didn't happen, that I'm pretty sure everyone thought was going to happen with Kyle Lowry not moving. I mean, he pretty much said goodbye to the city, gave the peace sign to the cameras, all that stuff. Were you kind of surprised he ended up not moving?
Yes and no. I mean, there was always the potential. I feel like there was an underrated potential of Lowry not going anywhere because, I mean, A, there were only 3 teams that were really jockeying hard for him.
Yeah.
And B, because he's just not, because of what he means to that franchise, he's not a player that you just get rid of casually. Like, you want to do right by Kyle Lowry. You want to make sure this is done on equal sides for everybody. Am I a little surprised? I mean, well, first, the Lakers jumping in was the surprise as well. I mean, this essentially seemed to be a 2-team race between the Sixers and between the Miami Heat for which one could land Kyle. The Lakers got in last minute, and it seems like they were in the mix as well. From what it seemed like, though, if we're to believe the reports that came out, it's just that Masai Ujiri wanted a high premium. And I don't think, Miami, it seemed like they weren't comfortable parting with Tyler Hero. For the Sixers, I think it was, the possibility, if you're to believe the reports, that they were going to have to not only part with picks, but Matisse Thybulle and Maxey as well.
Yeah.
I just don't think this is a situation where you get rid of both of them. Tyrese Maxey, we still worry about, him contributing and necessarily with the timeline of what this team is doing now. But I still think Maxey is going to be a good young player. And Matisse Thybulle, too important to that rotation. Obviously, Tyler Hero down in Miami. I know he's struggled at times this year, but we saw what he can do last year and how important he was on their run to the finals. It's one of these things where, I mean, Miami made the corresponding move then with Victor Oladipo, and we'll talk about that later. And I still think Miami's in play for a big man, something as well we're going to talk about later. For the Sixers, it was a big vote of confidence in the guys that they have now. Like, I mean, somebody said it online, but the joke was that, it's a big vote in the vibes, like that the locker room is great right now. And, we'll get into the George Hill acquisition and what they did in the aftermath. But, in terms of the Raptors, in the meantime, you get 2 more months of Kyle Lowry. He finished out his season with the team. Again, it sure seemed like he was going away, like you said, with the emotional look into the cameras after the end of that game, with the FaceTime from Drake, like with all these other little things that were going on. It sure made it seem like it was the end of Kyle's time in Toronto. Whatever, you got 2 more months with him. The fans get to enjoy a legend while they can. Unfortunately, they won't get to, if this is really it for him, if this season is still it no matter what, they won't get to send him out the proper way because they're in Tampa right now and not in Toronto. But they have the opportunity to go back and reset at the end of the season. And, there could very well be a sign and trade type situation facilitated. I mean, Kyle Lowry's still looking for big money apparently too. And that's the question is he's going to be 35 within the next couple of years. It'll be interesting to see how much money you get paid and how his game ages. But it's a missed opportunity for some of these teams in the way that, like, Kyle Lowry's an awesome player. Like in the Sixers, he could have potentially put them over the top just like that. And I think their chances of winning the East get a little bit better than they were before. Same with Miami as well. If they were able to land Lowry as well, I think that's a massive shot in the arm for them. For the Lakers, it would be a huge boost to, solidify their run at the title again. But I also think in all these team situations, it's not the end of the world either. Like, I think they're already doing well. The Lakers, are already in a position to defend regardless. We said that going into the season that it feels like they're the best team in the league. And that's, before they potentially add Andre Drummond. With Miami, again, they made the corresponding move with the Sixers. We'll see if it bites them in the playoffs later on. But when you're sitting at first in the East right now, I also understand doubling down on what you already have and making, not going all in potentially, because it would shorten that window necessarily with his age, that you do have to factor that in. And that's something Daryl Morey talked about.
And that's kind of what I wondered if obviously with the Sixers, that would be like a really like we're all in obviously kind of move, which I think when you're in the position the Sixers are in, you should do or should consider. My wonder with that too is because Lowry probably wants another bigger contract in terms of the money, probably deservingly so too. I wonder if teams were hesitant to be like, okay, this might technically be, a very short rental of Kyle Lowry, and we might be giving up a lot of assets to do it. So I understand that worry. But from the other side, Daryl Morey and the Raptors, they wanted a haul for him. And I get that because Kyle Lowry's deserving of that. He's been your franchise guy for a while now. And I mean, you think Kyle Lowry, you think the Raptors, but now you risk, you mentioned the signing trade, you risk not getting anything for him.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I am a little surprised. Like, it did feel like Masai Ujiri played chicken a little bit with some of these teams and lost, like trying to just, hedge them off each other. And you got to give them credit in Miami and Philly and the Lakers. Like, they held and they didn't, put it this way. I'd have been furious if the Sixers gave up Tybal, Maxey, and 2 first-rounders. I can understand the Heat's frustration as well if you're giving up 2+ first-rounders. I definitely wanted Kyle Lowry on the team. Like, there is some disappointment in the sense with the Sixers, or if you're in Miami, where I get getting Kyle Lowry, because you do go all in, and it makes your chances that much better in a season where both of these teams have potentially finals expectations. These opportunities don't come along very often, so I get wanting to push the chips in. But it's not about mortgaging the future, and I just think they were asking for a little bit too much. And when they didn't back off that at all, like, I'm a little surprised Ujiri didn't, back off a little bit. But I also think it's about just setting the market as well. It's saying, hey, listen, you want the premium. Kyle Lowry right now is good. If you want him as a contender, it's going to cost a lot if you want to get over the hump like that. And, that's just what it is sometimes. Sometimes you end up holding on to your guy and just, it's the way the business works.
Well, and I wonder, I wonder how many players would look at that and see and think to themselves, see, that's a team I would like to play for. That's a team that's going to back their star and not just be willing to part way with him because, their timeline's closing or whatever it is. They look at it and go, see, this, they understand the value that Lowry has to the Rockets, to the Raptors. There might be teams that think that or players that think that, right? Go, see, they're backing their guy. This could be a good look for future potential stars and their consideration of the Raptors, right?
I mean, a little bit, for sure. I mean, I think they were really open with Kyle Lowry regardless. Like, I don't think Kyle Lowry was just going to get exiled somewhere, put it that way. Like, I don't think they were going to ship him off to, like, a young rebuilding team and just try to get the peak return possible. Like, I think in their case, especially after DeRozan, like, that's the reality. Obviously, it worked out. They won the title, and that one-year rental of Kawhi was worth it. But, you burned some organizational goodwill when you shipped DeRozan out like that.
Yeah.
Even if it worked out, I don't think you can get away with that twice. Like, those are the type of moves you can do once in a while, but I don't necessarily think you get away with that twice, especially with Kyle Lowry. And so, but I do think teams will, or potential free agents, I should say, will look at how the Raptors have handled Kyle Lowry's situation and, say that is an appealing reason to go to that organization. Masai Ujiri, we've talked about for years how much, what he's meant to this organization, what he's done, and now he's made the Raptors the relevant basketball force they are today with the title team and, with Kyle Lowry, and was a huge part of that. And so, you just have to treat your employees right sometimes. And that's, I hesitate to say he's any normal employee. Obviously, these are any NBA players, but, you want to do right by your guys. And that's something that I think the Raptors have been, doing regardless, which is.
So the last warm-up jumper, a little off topic for what we're getting into. Obviously, the Drummond Aldridge new teams, the trade deadline winners are balling and falling coming up. But I wanted to bring up Mitchell Robinson again. He, for the Knicks, fractured his foot. It's the second bone break this season. He just can't catch a break, not to use the same word, but he suffered a fracture in his hand back in February. Obviously, that cost him a few weeks. He had just gotten back into game action like a week ago. Derrick Rose was talking, post game and found out about the fracture and got very emotional. You just feel bad for the guy. Obviously, the Knicks, a team that's shown a lot of improvement this year, as we've talked about. I feel like on a bunch of episodes, but I mean, this just kind of sucks for a team that's really got a guy that's starting to rise.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's been one of their – we talk about all the players that they imported this past season and the young guys and just how everything's been going right for the Knicks. I mean, Mitchell Robinson has looked like one of these guys here for a couple of years now, and just hasn't really been able to get off the ground this year. Like we said, the Knicks are in the midst of a playoff race. They're going to need everybody healthy, and to lose Mitchell Robinson here, which, I mean, I'm assuming – Actually, I don't want to assume. Who are we kidding? I'm not a doctor, but he's going to be out for an extended amount of time. The Knicks are in the thick of a playoff race right now. Now, I think they're absolute worst case scenario, and I don't think Mitchell Robinson is going to make or break that, but absolute worst case scenario, I think the Knicks are going to be in the playoff game, or the play-in game, excuse me. But I mean, yeah, this is a team that's fifth in the East right now as of recording this. They're a half game up on the Hawks, only a full game up on the Celtics, and a game and a half up on the Heat. I don't think, again, this is not a move that's going to just suddenly tank all the good vibes and that they're going to get knocked out of contention now, but it's definitely a tough one for the Knicks.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if there's now renewed interest in Andre Drummond. Some of we will talk about later. I know, at least, I don't think it's been made official, but Woj was pretty much tweeting last night like he's going to the Lakers. So that'll be something we'll get into later. And my last little third warm-up jumper that I have to throw in here, my little subtle shout-out to the Flagler College Saints making it to the Final Four in Division II March Madness. They did get beat. Dude, get this. It is Flagler College's first winning season in 12 years. To put that in perspective, their last winning season was the season before I started going there in 2008. I graduated, got a job, got another job, hated that job, stayed with that job, and here we are.
Shout out to Flagler. I mean, hey, that's a hell of a run. Shout out to the boys. Great job. Shout out to, obviously March Madness is still going on right now. We're about to be an Elite Eight. We are not college basketball experts. No. You may be a little bit more than me, but I'm not going to remotely give you my March Madness take. I went chalky. I picked Gonzaga to win it all.
Well, there is a kind of generic basketball discussion that could come from what Flagler did, because it really was sort of like a Cinderella story. Obviously, it ended short, but they were, I believe they were the fourth seed going in. But again, from a season that they didn't win, and there's the guy on the team that is the star is Jacek Lottie. I believe, if I have the story correct, he played for Arkansas last year, but moved back to Division II. So there's that debate that we had on ESPN was, there's that, I guess the word stigma, there's like a vibe, right? Division II is not as good as Division I. And, people talk about that all the time. But what we were talking about on ESPN and what Austin had brought up, because he went to Murray State for football, is sometimes it's also about fit. You could be on a D1 on a team, cool, but if you're riding the bench, like, are you really getting your playing time? Are you really experiencing it? Where you could go to D2, play for a team, be the guy, and really, make a name for yourself. So a lot of times it is about fit. And I know this is a college discussion. I just wanted to bring up Flagler because they played really, really well. They did get absolutely worked by, they won the whole thing, and I can't remember the name. But either way, they lost to the winning March Madness team, which also counts for something, right?
No, yeah. And I mean, it's always interesting. With football, it's a little... I don't want to say it's easier, but because the rosters are bigger, if you really shine in D2, I think you'll have extra chances to get there.
Right.
But I mean, we're starting to see it with how many guys are in between the G League routes and between one and done? Like, NBA talent is everywhere now. I don't think you necessarily have to go to, you don't have to go to Duke anymore. You don't have to go to Kentucky. You don't have to go to, X other big program, Syracuse, whatever it may be, to just get on the scene, to get on the map. Like, and it happens all the time. Like, and with plenty of guys that don't go pro, who, you go to a school, you may not like it, you may not, the system may not be what you're looking for, and you go to another school and you break out, and sometimes it leads to guys getting drafted. So, I mean, it's like anything else. It's all about the fit. You want to be as comfortable as possible. But, I mean, the good thing is, in today's era, more than anything, is, if you go to a D2 school and you're that good, you're that dude, you're NBA caliber, level of basketball, you're going to get spotted. This isn't a situation where, you don't have a scout going out to, like Morehead State or something like that. I know Morehead State's a D1 school, but either way, like, if someone's killing it at Flagler, they're going to get spotted by somebody. They're not just going to be, they're not going to be essentially an anonymity,
Yeah, and by the way, the champs were Northwest Missouri State, who, if I remember correct, so see, you could tell it's very different when you watch a D2 broadcast compared to a D1 broadcast. Obviously, the broadcasters are different, but not to harp on it, I feel like they didn't do a ton of research on the teams, if that makes sense. Like, it was on CBS Sports Network on Wednesday and Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, were the two Flagler matches that I watched. And both times, it was like the only thing they really could harp on was that Jazik was from a D1 school and came back to a D2 school, and that Flagler had a winning season in 12 years. Like, that was their two things they just kept circulating and circulating and circulating. I was like, oh my God, tell me Flagler hasn't had a winning season in 12 years one more time. But I think the other thing they kept saying about Northwest Missouri State was that they were the most efficient basketball team in all of college basketball, D1, D2, like all of it, and it showed up. Like it, not to like sugarcoat it. They beat Flagler like 70-43. Like, they whooped them. Whooped them, and then went on to win it, the whole thing. And so, it was a cool watch. It was cool to see. Obviously, Flagler doesn't have a football team, so this was the most like, whoa, we're doing something crazy in sports, and that's no dig at the soccer team. I know the soccer team, women's and men's, is really good. I know the softball team and baseball team is really good too, but baseball just
like basketball and football does, or
yeah, like basketball, it was like we're in March Madness, like there was the alumni pages were going crazy and people were talking about it, so it was a lot of fun. And Jazik, we were able to connect with Jazik and get him on ESPN's show and do a little thing. I thought it was funny, though, like 20 minutes before he came on, he tweeted out here, he said, D2 gets no love, like as he's on hold for our show. And I'm like, dang, dude, come on. Like, we're helping you out, man. We're getting you on.
And it's up with the D2 National, because, I imagine at that point, once you're at the Final Four of the D2 tournament, you're on national commentators. And that's just the point, is these national commentators probably haven't watched D2 all year.
And they joked numerous times. They're like, probably could have, because like they did a whole thing. So Flagler Saints is the team name, and our mascot is a lion. Okay. And that really threw off the announcers. Like, they didn't get it. They were like, maybe we should have done a little more research into why it's a lion. And I was like, what you don't know is when I went to school, they hadn't really put a lot of money into the mascot. So the mascot, its eyes were like droopy and they wiggled around when it moved. So it looked more like a drunk monkey than it did a lion. But yeah, we're the Flagler Lion Saints.
Yeah, Flagler Lion Saints. And they've come a long way. Your boys are prospering. Welcome, everybody, to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Justin Kuzart.
Thanos, ? Or maybe Jesus?
Oh, man. I saw this tweet, too. Shoot. I forget who it is. It's not JaVale McGee, right?
Dude, no, it's not. But this guy actually is on like a weird Thanos Marvel superhero kick, because he had another tweet talking about one of his players coming back from injury and how it'll be like Thanos. They're going to destroy the NBA.
Was somebody on the Lakers then?
No, Enes Kanter.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, he's on a weird. Yeah, he's on a weird Thanos kick, but this was obviously in response to Woj's tweet about LaMarcus Aldridge going to the Nets, which we will talk about later on in the episode, because that's something I definitely want to get to. I was surprised not to get into it now, but I was surprised a lot of people were pretty much saying like this makes them worse, and we could talk about that. Because
with the takes right away. All right, we're here already. Okay.
No. That's my tease. The hot take is the tease, because I don't necessarily agree, but I think I get what they were trying to say. But I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I guess it comes down to the market, and that's something that we'll discuss a little bit. Is just like where we're evaluating on the market versus past performance. But
right.
Like I said, we'll get into that later. Listen to the podcast everywhere you can find a podcast. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We will read it on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, Player, FM, Amazon Music, Google Play Store, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yes. And we are moving our YouTube, lineups.com. Those guys are awesome and helped us out a lot, but we will be moving to our own Drive and Dish NBA YouTube page. We do plan to try to do a little more content than just the video part of this podcast on there. You just got to give us some time to free up our schedules a little bit. We got a lot going on both ends.
No, Justin's getting married. No. Let me rephrase it. No, Justin is getting married. Kevin has now, especially now that this half marathon's over. I have nothing going on.
You got more half marathon trainings to get in.
Yeah. During the middle of the Florida summer.
Listen. I saw your photo and I went, yeah, no, I never want to do that. I'm sure it was
yesterday.
Well, yeah, it was hot. I'm sure it was a great accomplishment feeling at the end of the day, but man, oh man, I looked at you and I went, I just want to drink so much water for him. Like, yeah. I want to drink all the water. But yes, so we will be getting our YouTube page up and running. But for now, just follow us on social media. We'll be sure to tweet out those links when they come through. Obviously, it'll just be under the same name, Drive and Dish NBA Podcast on YouTube. It should be up there at the drop of this episode, as long as I don't totally screw something up. We'll see how it goes.
And now a word from our sponsors. All right, from Emmy-winning director Antoine Fuqua and the NBA All-Star Chris Paul comes The Day Sports Stood Still, the new HBO documentary that tells the story of the unprecedented sports shutdown in March of 2020 and the remarkable turn of events that followed, chronicling the abrupt stoppage of sports, the athletes' prominent role in the cultural reckoning on racial injustices that escalated during the pandemic, and the complex return to competition. Stream The Day Sports Stood Still now on HBO Max. HBO Max, Day Sports Stood Still, the new documentary.
I'm excited to watch it because I know it'll be a situation, this kind of timeline, right? This time frame that we just went through this past year. I mean, things are starting to open back up. Hopefully we're getting back to normal. I know I was in line. I pretty much, I mean, as of tomorrow for I think Florida, 18 and up can get the shot. I may have that wrong.
No, so it's starting tomorrow as recorded. So we're recording this on a Sunday. So tomorrow, and this is only for Florida. It's definitely different in your state. Please check that out because a lot of states are there already. So March 29th, starting tomorrow, you can get a vaccine if you are 40 and older. And then the following Monday, I believe it's April 5th, that's when it's 18 and up. Anywhere, any site, whether you're at a pharmacy, a FEMA site, a state-run county vaccination site, whatever, you can go and get your shots and please go get vaccinated. Like, we're almost done. Let's get this over with. Well,
and so to that, when we hopefully go back to relatively normal, although I hate that saying, it'll be cool years from now talking about this situation and how insane it was, how literally sports stopped. So it'll be cool to see the documentary and see how it's already being, kind of categorized and how things like that are going to go. I was joking with my friend the other day. I was like, will this be like we weren't allowed to leave the house? We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. Be the new we had to walk up hills both ways to school. Like when we're like 50.
It might be, bro. That's a good point because it's crazy. I mean, it was surreal. I mean, I remember basically when this all got started, besides the grocery store and like I was going to work, but the only places I remember going on the weekends were like Dunkin' Donuts was open. The one Dunkin' Donuts had a drive-thru open, so I would go and get coffee. So I have a coffee machine in my house at the time. I don't know why I've been slacking so hard. I do now, for the record. I have a Keurig. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? I would still run. Like, I would go outside and run. And even that, like, I thought would get to a point where you might have to wear a mask. And if it got to that, like, running in a mask, obviously, is a tad bit difficult.
You just got to get one of those, those oxygen masks, the like, running an altitude mask. Whew.
Yeah, I'm telling you, something like that. But yeah, it was definitely surreal. I mean, those NBA games, like, I'll never forget knowing the NBA was just canceled and then Denver and Dallas having to finish that second half. It was certainly certainly ain't nothing like it.
From like a podcast perspective, I remember we were texting. We're like, "What are we gonna do? Like, what are we gonna talk about for however long the NBA is done? Like, what are we gonna do?"
We talked about horse one week. We literally, unironically, talked about that horse competition because there was nothing else to talk about.
We did. The horse competition. Wasn't there another one? The NBA 2K tournament that they did. Like, man, there was some cool moments. So hopefully all that's covered in the documentary, and yes, definitely check it out when you have a chance. So the big trades that happened, I want to kind of focus it on, I guess, let's start with the Orlando Magic in terms of the players that left. The biggest,
they're the most active by far. There's no way around it. Like in terms of
I'm trying to
everything.
I'm trying to figure out from a national narrative. If you looked at those trades, Aaron Gordon, Vooch, which one do you think from an average fan? I know we're kind of biased because we're down here, so we know like Vooch was having a season, obviously was in the All-Star game, but I feel like Aaron Gordon's the bigger name. So would you think that's the one that National is like, whoa, they got rid of their star? Or would it be Vooch going to the Bulls that they were like, whoa, they got rid of their star, you know?
I think it's a little of both. I think for most NBA fans, it's Vooch. I think for the casuals, maybe it's more Aaron Gordon because of the dunk contest, he may be the more household names. I also think more people expected Aaron Gordon to get traded. I mean, we were on this podcast multiple times saying I didn't expect Vooch to get traded because I didn't think the market would be there. Like I didn't think what the Magic would require to pry him was out there, and it just turned out it was within Chicago. And so, I mean, we'll just running down these moves real quick. The Magic got Wendell Carter, Otto Porter. The Bulls 2021 first, it's top 4 protected. The Bulls 2020 third first as well, also top 4 protected. The Bulls got Vooch and Al-Farouq Aminu. And then the other one, the Aaron Gordon trade, is the Nuggets got Aaron Gordon and Gary Clark. The Magic got Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and the Nuggets 2025 first from Denver. That's a top 5 protected pick. And then Evan Fournier also got shipped out as well. The Magic got Jeff Teague. And then 2 second rounders. The Magic immediately bought out Jeff Teague. And this is where it's at. I mean, in terms of strictly for Orlando, now the full rebuild's on. I mean, now we're fully tanking it, which I think is what a lot of people wanted to do anyway. I mean, Nick Renowitz and I talked last week, and shout out to Nick for coming on. They just need to get bad. They've always been that one elite prospect away, and I think this is the way to do it. Now, I hope they're not too far gone because, catching Detroit, catching Houston the way they're going right now, catching Minnesota could be a little difficult. But they're still in the mix for that. They should be in the business of acquiring assets. I mean, the fact that you got 2 first-rounders for Nikola Vucevic, as good as he's playing, he doesn't fit the timeline of next Magic basketball. And that's just what it comes down to. It's, putting him in a situation where, he's happy and he gets, potential to play more meaningful basketball. The Bulls clearly, to me, that my takeaway for the Bulls is that they're all in on making a playoff run this year. They want to be in this playoff game. They want to pair him with Zach LaVine.
To that, I like the pairing. And I saw an article by SB Nation. We'll jump into that in a second. But for the Bulls, like, I get that you want to make the playoff run and you want to make that push, but does he fit even your timeline of what you're trying to do?
No, but I have no idea what Chicago's trying to do, and I guess that's my point. To put bluntly, like Vooch is a really good player, Zach LaVine's a really good player. I still believe in Lauri Markkanen more than I don't. But I don't know. It kind of seems like they want to have their cake and eat it too. I mean, clearly the goal is to get back in the playoffs. I mean, that going out and making Vooch, that's that type of move. Thad Young has also played really well for them. So, and I get trying to make Zach LaVine happy and rewarding him a little bit the way he's playing. You want him to play meaningful basketball. But
and you want to
long term. Yeah, I don't really know that this necessarily fits anything. I mean, Wendell Carter's been pretty up and down since his rookie year, more down to be honest. His rookie year, he looked like a star.
To that point though, with Zach LaVine, when you look at the Bulls, why wouldn't you just double Zach LaVine every single time? You know what I mean? And that's no disrespect to the other Bulls players. It's just he's their star,
right?
Blitz him and just put a guy on him. Yes, you said Thad Young's starting to play better, but now that you have Vooch, like, You can't do that
No.
you can't do that easily. You question it a little bit more, right? But again, like I said, Vooch expected to make or will make 46 million for 31 and 32 his age the next 2 seasons. So like, you know, I get it. I just felt like it was a weird timeline for it, but I think at the end of the day, they wanted somebody that's going to give Zach LaVine that relief, so he's not getting just double teamed every single time. And to that, a fun stat that I saw from SB Nation was that Vooch is the 8th in the NBA in terms of value over replacement, which is right between James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. So the value is definitely there.
Vooch
Now
is awesome. Like,
yeah,
and that get lost in Orlando. And again, we talked about that a little bit, but Vooch is awesome.
well,
Like, he's having he's playing the best basketball of his career. He's been cooking for at least 4 or 5 years now. Like, I think KD tweeted a couple years ago, like, Vooch might be the most underrated player in the NBA. I'm hoping he gets a little more spotlight now in Chicago, because a lot of it just has been not his fault. Like, he's been the good soldier here in Orlando for the better course of a decade that was pretty forgettable basketball largely. I mean, I know it's been a little better recently in the aftermath of the Hennigan era, but, we don't need to relive that. That still gives Magic fans PTSD.
Well, and to that, like, I think that's a big part of it too, is like, yes, Vooch was putting up these numbers with Orlando, and I keep saying with Orlando, and I feel like it's so disrespectful to the Orlando players, but now he's going to have another star in Zach LaVine next to him. That really should open things up on both ends. We talked about Zach not having to deal with potential double teams now. Like, it's going to go both ways. So, I think that'll be really good for Vooch. I just feel like it's a weird fit for the timeline of the teams, though I am excited that it gets him out there and gets him to do it. On the Orlando Magic side of it, man, I look at it and I'm like, oh, you got to go through what feels like another rebuild. I feel like the Magic have been, quote unquote, rebuilding for a really long time now.
Yeah.
And, to that, I feel like it sounds horrible, but I feel like the Orlando Magic are the perfect example of you got to hit on your first round picks in the draft.
Yeah.
And it just really, like, go back and look. Aaron Gordon might be the last one that you really can go, oh, I know who that is, and that sounds horrible, but like, the guys just haven't panned out, whether it's injuries, it's not necessarily their fault. It just, it's been multiple years in a row where it's just not the guy,
Yeah, or they've had good players and they ship them off. Victor Oladipo is in here and is gone. Domantas Sabonis is in here and is gone. Tobias Harris is gone. The list goes on and on. Some of it has been injury related. Jonathan Isaac is really, really good, and he just hasn't been able to stay healthy, unfortunately, and that's a big, bummer for them. Cole Anthony seemed like he was the success story this year, and then has got dealt with injuries again. Chuma Okeke didn't even play his first rookie year. He's just getting minutes now. But I agree with your point. I mean, it's been a long slog since Dwight Howard for Magic fans, and that's the problem, is where, they got a glimmer of hope when they got that 8 seed a couple of years ago, and I think they ended the season on a really high note, and fans were excited about that. They won that first game against the Bucks in dramatic fashion, but then they got swept out. The next year, they also got, they lost 4 straight after that. The next year, they also got swept out. And so the problem is, cool, do you want to be this 8 seed who never, just always is on the mix of it with these couple of good players that you have, and maybe you bring a couple of draft picks in, or do you just have to be really, really bad one more time? I'm a proponent I'm a Sixers fan. I feel like everyone knows where we're at now.
Yeah.
So you got to be really bad sometimes. And yeah, it stinks that Mo Bamba hasn't panned out so far, but they also were 1 pick away from Trae Young. Those couple of wins are the difference there between, what the timeline looks like now and having to go through another full rebuild. I think it won't be a total rebuild, because the Magic do have some good young players. Like I said, I mentioned Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, if he's healthy. I think Markelle Fultz has shown that he could be a player there in Orlando, so you've got him in the mix as well. If you hit on one of these draft picks this year, say you have a top 4 pick, ideally, obviously, Cade Cunningham is whoever gets him, that's the biggest winner in the sweepstakes. But if you get a top end talent this year in Orlando, it'll help, stable Orlando fans' stomachs a little bit. I think this is the right call, and I think hardcore fans of this franchise understand that. But I also do think for the casuals and for a lot of other people, yeah, it's been tough. It's been a really tough go of it as an Orlando Magic fan, and there hasn't been a lot to be excited about. You're hoping now that this is the turn of you're turning the page on a new rebuild, a successful rebuild to get competitive again, and that you're not going back into the hell that you kind of were in after Dwight Howard got traded.
Yeah,
That said, I do think the Magic got great value on all these deals as well.
I agree.
With getting 2 first rounders, getting a young player with some upside in Wendell Carter, for Aaron Gordon, you get RJ Hampton, a potentially young player who could, again, fits your timeline, could be somebody there. You get another first round pick to add to the arsenal. I was surprised I thought they could maybe get a little more than 2 first rounders for Fournier, given how good he's been in the clutch and how good he is at scoring a little bit this year. But if that's what it is, so be it. And you also have Gary Harris, who is a good veteran to have in your locker room. He played a lot of good minutes for Denver over the past couple of seasons. And on top of that, it's still going to hold a lot of value to other teams. So if you decide you just want to move on, you still got him on the roster. You got Terrence Ross as well, who had the hilarious "I'm the captain now" tweet since he's like the only vet left on squad. But I think Orlando, again, hard to stomach, but I do think they're heading in the right direction. I do want to go to Denver now because Denver, again, Aaron Gordon had a lot of bidders out there. I still thought Portland would have been my overall ideal fit, but I think this is a really good pickup for Denver as well.
Yeah, I like the fit for it. I was looking at the hopefully I can pull it up here real quick. I was just looking at what their projected starting lineup is, because I believe as of recording this podcast, if I'm not mistaken, tonight will be his first game against Atlanta. But you tell me a starting lineup of Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., Jokic, and Gordon. That's a good I like that lineup a lot. And the other part of it, the unspoken part of it, because you look at that lineup, does Aaron Gordon really need to be the guy they need to score? Not necessarily.
No,
I think they want him to be the guy that's going to match up against a Giannis, match up against a James Harden, match up against Luka, defend Jimmy Butler. Like, this is going to be the guy they put on the guy that's scoring against them that they need to stop, And I think while Gordon's defense is fine, I think that's huge for them in terms of you can free up the people that you want to score. You can lighten the load a little bit. So I think that'll be a huge part of it that may not necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but that'll be huge for Denver as well.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon needs to play good defense and just basically be a supplemental scorer. Like, he's never going to be their first offensive option when you have Jokic and Jamal Murray on the team. It was never going to be that. But I think he plugs into that starting lineup really well. Denver loves having these athletic wings to play with these guys that can get to the hole, that can get out and get in transition. I also think with Aaron Gordon, like we said, he fits the age timeline as well. I think he's all, he isn't, they didn't sell their future essentially to go out and get Aaron Gordon. I think this is the type of move that they need to make. And more importantly, I just think he kind of replaces the Jeremy Grant role that they lost. Like, they've been missing that big time since Jeremy Grant bolted for Detroit in the offseason. Mm-hmm. To me, I'm not saying he's going to be Jeremy Grant, but I think he can play that type of role, something that Denver's really been missing here. I think you kind of have a lot of certainty around your identity now going forward. And I like, it's just another move of the West getting tougher. I think this is a really good move for Denver. I think it shows that they're going to make another run at this thing. They've got a chance, if everything goes right, to be right there back in the conference finals again.
I know the Lakers are hurt right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the Nuggets as the number one team to come out of the West right now?
No, it might be Phoenix, honestly. I can't. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Phoenix's chance to win the Western Conference if the Lakers are hurt. I don't know. In theory, it should be the Clippers, but I have too many concerning questions with the Clippers right now, especially about their crunch time offense. Though they made some moves as well, notably with Lou Williams going out the door. So I'm interested to see what they do. To me, there's 4 teams that stand. 5 probably, honestly. Between Utah, between Phoenix, between the Clippers, between the Jazz, or not the Jazz, excuse me, the Nuggets and the Trailblazers. Those 5 teams to me all, to some degree or another, have a chance to win the Western Conference if the East is hurt, or if the Lakers remain hurt, I should say.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Are there any teams that you think... No, I don't like that question. Never mind.
Okay. All right.
I was going to ask if there's any teams that from the trade deadline really start to drop off now for you in the West, but I don't feel like anybody really did. I was looking at maybe Spurs, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Warriors area. If any of them now, I mean, Warriors and Grizzlies are already out of it, but if you see anybody dropping out of the playoff race there.
No, I mean, nobody that did do it intentionally. I mean,
Yeah.
Orlando's going all in the tank, but again, that's intentional. Oklahoma City's going all in the tank with the Al Horford news that he's not even going to play the rest of the season. They're going to work in the offseason to find buyouts with him. And I mean, I'm a little surprised. I mean, Al Horford, if he got bought out now, I think I would have plenty of suitors in the market. I mean, are you kidding me? You don't think Boston would love to bring Al Horford back into the mix?
It's the first team I thought of.
Yeah, a couple of others as well. So we'll see what happens there. But he's gonna, he'll be on the roster for the rest of the season. I mean, let's just stick in the West real quick before we get to Oladipo, who's obviously the other big move. You've got Rajon Rondo going to the Clippers. They, need a playmaker. They decided to move on from Lou Williams. They also took the Hawks get 2 second rounders in that as well. And then the Trailblazers going out and getting Norman Powell from Toronto. We talked about Kyle Lowry earlier at the beginning of the show. Norman Powell was the other guy who looked like he was going to be on a deadline. He did get moved. The Raptors got Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. Norman's really good, man. I kind of feel like the Blazers, Gary Trent Jr.'s got a lot of upside still, so I don't want to call this a fleecing, but this is a really good deal for Portland.
I just wonder how he fits in with Portland. You know what I mean? Like, I get how Portland's going, but obviously it's like CJ and Dame show out there. So I get you kind of have to work that into the rotation a little bit, which seems like you have to work at that a little more than you would like to. So that's why I was kind of surprised it was Portland,
Yeah, I mean, the one-game return is really good. And again, one-game return so far. But Norman Powell did look pretty good in his debut last night. I like this fit a lot for him. See, I'm not as worried about that as much. But these Western Conference teams, loading up. With the Clippers, it's interesting with Rondo. But I think they needed that guy. They needed a little bit of a playmaker.
But is this more like a playoff Rondo move or what?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think it's a playoff move.
Yeah, it just felt weird. Like when I first looked at it, obviously this was without looking at any stats or anything like that. I was just like, it doesn't really, in my mind, really change them much,
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I get it. I think it's a locker room thing as well too. I just also think, bringing that respectability, bringing that championship experience.
But Lou Williams will be excited. I mean, he's closer to that strip club that's got the good wings now.
No, shout out to Magic City. Let me get a lemon pepper order, please. No, I mean, there's so many of those jokes already. I don't want to. There's been so many.
Poor Lou.
All right, poor Lou. Well, Lou, he said he debated retiring, but he's
really.
Yeah, he said he debated retiring after it. But he says he's gonna still play and have some fun in Atlanta. Like we said, him play. I mean, he's in his hometown, so I think that is cool. I think you can have some fun. Lou was obviously closer to the end of his career than the beginning of it, so I think he'll have some fun in his hometown. All right, so the Miami Heat super active as well, getting Victor Oladipo. The Rockets got Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, and the right to swap 2022 first round picks. They have either the Rockets or the Nets. They also went out and got Nemanja Bjelica as well. Those the two big moves there, but going to Oladipo. This is somebody who, I mean, frankly, you're buying low on, to be honest, and you've got a good chance of re-signing him. But, I mean, if you're giving up Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley, that's what we're talking about for getting Victor Oladipo. The upside is so much higher. It's been an up and down go for Oladipo, not just with the injuries, but in general the past couple of years. But to me, I don't know. I don't see any downside to going to get Victor Oladipo, and it just adds another weapon for them come playoff time. To me, it just solidifies them as we're going to make another run at the Eastern Conference again.
It's so crazy to me how 2 years can change the narrative of Victor Oladipo. I mean, obviously the horrible injury, but before that, he was the dude in Indiana. He was the guy. So it's crazy how much has changed so quickly. SB Nation, The Ringer actually pointed this out, that Houston essentially passed on a chance to pair Karis LeVert with Wood in a younger core going forward, that to potentially save about $18.5 million off the cap sheet, and then obviously Olynyk's $12 million expiring contract.
Oh, Houston should be relegated. Bring up a G League team. Houston should be relegated after. This is what you got for James Harden. This is the worst trade maybe in NBA history. I'm already ready to fire the cannon on that. That is absolutely out. You got 2 first rounders 20 games of Victor Oladipo and Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley for James Harden. For
Mm-hmm.
James Harden. A guy
Mm-hmm.
who's right back in the MVP race, a top 5 potential player. Like, I understand superstar trades are hard, but
You
oh man, that is one of the worst. I mean, they somehow topped OKC's return on James Harden, and that is really saying something. Just what a nightmare. You're right. Like, I don't get why you don't keep LeVert in that situation. LeVert,
right.
you pair him with Wood, you pair him with John Wall, and you go. Like, that at least makes sense. You have somebody you can develop and build around. Oladipo, you already knew it was a shot with him, and as soon as he wouldn't sign that extension, now you got to sell low.
Mm-hmm. And that's the problem is obviously the Rockets are struggling, and it's going to be an interesting rebuild. I don't know how you build yourself out of it. Like, there is,
Well, they're not. Just coming for Tita stinks. Like, that's just what it all comes down to. It's like, you hate to say it, but like, he stinks. As soon as he came in, ownership went real south. They don't want to spend money. They view this as a business opportunity, and so that's fine. You're just not gonna, it's hard to make finals runs when you're trying to pinch pennies, and like, he's been pinching pennies from day one.
Well, and to that last point you made a second ago with Harden in the MVP running, do you feel like there should be an argument against him because of how poorly he played with the Rockets
No,
at the beginning?
no, I don't care. No, I don't care about that at all. I literally couldn't care less. He was playing great on Houston. He's still playing great on Brooklyn. He's had to carry a significant load for them this year with KD missing time and with Kyrie missing time. And I said this last week too. I think Nikola Jokic is the MVP. Like, let me be as clear as possible. I think the amount of disrespect that Jokic is getting shown right now in the MVP race is frankly a little bit appalling. But Harden should be. He's right there in that mix too. He should definitely be in the conversation this year.
I agree with you on that one. So,
but yeah, no, I mean, it's just terrible overall for Houston. I mean, and then besides of it, the other two big things, the big takeaways from trade deadline, we mentioned Kyle Lowry, but the other two not getting moved is John Collins staying in Atlanta. We'll see what happens there, and Lonzo Ball. The Pelicans deciding to hold firm on Lonzo Ball. Somebody who's been playing really well since he came up in the trade rumors. A couple of teams were rumored to be pretty interested in him. One of them being Chicago. But the Pelicans decided to end up staying, keep him there, allow him to keep playing with Zion and Brandon Ingram, and we'll see what happens on that front. But definitely an active deadline. Even with Harden being moved early, you kind of wondered some of the punch should be taken away, but it definitely not any dull moment on that front. So a pretty active deadline, a pretty fun one. Also, Woj totally dominated Shams. We don't need to talk about that now, but boy, Woj just went to work. Woj Tom Brady did. He pulled the Tom Brady on Mahomes, where it was just like, no, hang on, you need to remember who I am.
I got this. Dude, Woj confused the hell out of me at first because when he put out the tweet about Vooch going to the Bulls, my dumbass read it as Aaron Gordon. So I was like, oh wow, Aaron Gordon going to the Bulls, that's crazy. And I put out some tweet of like, if they can go get themselves Lonzo Ball, that'd be kind of cool. I like this whole thing. And then I see the tweet that Aaron Gordon's going to the Nuggets, and I was like, oh, wait, did Woj get one wrong? And then I was really confused, went back, and I was like, oh, I had it wrong. I had the wrong Magic player going to the wrong place. So either way, it ended up working out, and yeah, Woj continues to impress.
Yeah. All right. Who's balling, who's falling, our NBA version of the stock market. We always start with the good before the bad. The good for me actually comes from last night. It's Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes just hit a ridiculous game winner against Cleveland. Catching the ball, Sacramento not being able to advance the ball, down one, just catching the heave on the Hail Mary, turning around, burying this jumper, well guarded, give the Kings the win, 98-97. Excuse me. That followed a layup. Colin Sexton had hit a layup with 1.6 seconds left to basically look like it gives Cavs the win. And then De'Aaron Fox just heaved this ball from baseline to baseline. Just a crazy, crazy degree of difficulty on that game winner. It's for nothing else than that. But yeah, just what a shot.
Well, and it seemed like the NBA saw all the March Madness action going on with Oral Roberts coming down to that three that I thought was going in. I was like, damn, that was a good look, dude. Like, you can't ask for a better look than that.
I wanted it to so bad.
I remember telling my fiance, we were watching it because her family, her dad went to Arkansas, so obviously they were rooting for Arkansas. But I was like, the whole narrative they've been talking about how Oral Roberts is like 3 for 19 from three. This is going to be the one that goes in. It's the narrative. Like, you just got to follow the narrative. And he shoots it up, and I was like, see, I told you. And then it missed, and I was like, oh, that you don't ask for a better look than that. So Oral Roberts. But that was the NBA going, Oral Roberts, we saw your action with the last few seconds, and we're going to one-up. Hold our beer. And they went out and pulled a little March Madness of their own. So my ballin's actually going out to Popovich because he is now the NBA's 1,300 win club. He is, I believe he's in third on the list now of coaches. I believe Lenny Wilkins is 32 more wins than him, and Don Nelson is 35 more wins than him. So I wonder if Pop now knows that and considers that before maybe considering retirement and just keeps going until he can be number one on that list.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's certainly got a chance. I mean, he's going to keep coaching as long as he wants to. So, and we know that San Antonio doesn't exactly go in the tank and lose any time soon. Even when they're not good, they're still good.
There's next year. I mean, how many wins do they have right now? Hold on, I'll pull it up. So
San Antonio has 23 wins right now. They're 23-20.
Do you think next year? I mean, obviously there's still some games here, so we'd have to see what they end up with. But you think next year is like I just need 20 wins out of you guys. Just give me 20 wins this season. Right. That's all I want.
We got 20 wins for like 25 years straight or something like that. Yeah. 30 years almost, it feels like. And I have faith in him to eke that out. But yeah, shout out to Pop, absolute legend. On the NBA coaching Mount Rushmore, just done one of the best jobs of all time. And in breaking Spurs news, doesn't happen much. Apparently the Spurs are going to sign Gorgie Deng. So that'll tie into our big man seg a little bit as well. I'm kind of surprised. I thought a couple of contenders would take a swing at Gorgie Deng. He could have helped a lot of squads, but
there was a lot of social chatter about him being better than Aldridge and all this stuff that they were talking about in terms of.
We'll find out. He's going to be replacing LaMarcus Aldridge in San Antonio, so I guess we'll see what happens on that front real quick. All right, falling for me this week is our favorite trade deadline tradition. The Boston Celtics almost got blank. So, of course, they were tied to the Aaron Gordon sweepstakes. They almost signed Aaron Gordon. And then, of course, he got traded to Denver. They apparently were in the high mix for Drummond. They were going to get Andre Drummond, and now it looks like Andre Drummond's going to the Lakers, or potentially the Knicks, honestly. In fact, in the aftermath of that Mitchell Robinson sweepstakes, I feel like that could get talked about, or sweepstakes. The Mitchell Robinson injury, I feel like that could get talked about a little more. He would make a lot of sense for them there, but either way, it looks like he's going to the Lakers.
Well, but and honestly,
there's no tradition better than Boston being linked to almost landing every player ever that's available on the deadline.
That's usually how it goes, but like we said, I mean, honestly, I can foresee an Al Horford situation in the near future. I wonder if that's actually what happens. But to that, Woj did say that Drummond was going to make the announcement or we would know by Sunday, which is today. We're recording on a Sunday. So I'm assuming by the time this episode comes out, he'll either be on the Lakers or we'll know where he's going. Woj was pretty confident, or at least tweeting that he was pretty confident that it was going to be the Lakers. So
if the Lakers are recruiting him hard, it feels like it's going to be the Lakers. Miami, obviously, though, could be back in the mix as well. Like, that's the thing. I think Miami needs a big man. There were a lot of reports with LaMarcus Aldridge being interested in Miami. Obviously, he kind of surprised. Well, I don't know if surprised is the word, but he ended up going with Brooklyn instead. So we're going to see what this buyout market looks like real quick.
Yeah, with the freaking Nets just getting everyone. Either way, so my fallen is going to Terrence Mann, who is on the Clippers. The other day, he was talking about Rondo coming to the team. And he pulled out a basketball card that he had, and he's had in there since he was in middle school. And it is a Rajon Rondo basketball card. And now they are teammates. And man, oh man, it's falling because Rondo has to feel old as dirt now because he's with a teammate who's had your basketball card in his wallet since middle school.
He's been with the kids, man. It's different. I mean, Terrence Mann was hooping the other night. I was wondering where you were going for a sec. I was like, wait, he kind of cooked the Sixers last night. Listen, that's the game now. Imagine how LeBron feels all the time. I mean, LeBron literally ushered a generation of these kids. I mean, Kobe was the same way. Tim Duncan was the same way. Like, it's just, that's the business sometime. I mean, credit to Rondo for being in the league this long and being this much of a factor still. He's, getting traded to contenders and things like that. So, I don't know. I view that as a blessing.
Either way, talking about contenders, we have a lot of players that are just going to contenders, taking the easy road, as you will.
Oh wow, you're
Um,
spicy today. Okay, okay.
Look, I think if there is a weird feeling about it. I mean, obviously Blake Griffin going to the Nets, and now LaMarcus Aldridge going to the Nets. It does feel like it's like, come on, man, do you guys just like what are we? Come on, like we
The
can't.
ring running. We know what it is. The ring running.
We can't diversify it a little bit. Like, we're talking about go to the Heat, go to the Sixers.
Would you rather go to the Lakers?
No, not really, honestly. I'd rather them go to the Clippers, go to the Jazz, go to the Suns, like teams that are going to make a run for it anyway, but let's keep it interesting so it doesn't feel like it filters down to 4 teams, you know?
Okay, here's my hot take. They're going to not play Nick Claxton now because they've got DeAndre Jordan and LaMarcus
Yeah.
Aldridge, and that's a mistake.
Yes, and so I was going to bring that up is I think that's what those tweets were about, saying that they got worse because now you give yourself a problem with DeAndre Jordan and Nick Claxton where like you're just not going to have enough time for these guys, you know? And Claxton through 11 games, everyone was talking about was relatively impressive. I mean, 9 points, almost 4 rebounds, block and a half a game in 18 minutes per game, shooting 64%. So there is the counter argument of, okay, well, if you put LaMarcus Aldridge in and he's not doing well, put Claxton back. You know, just start putting Claxton in more. And they're not going to be held to like, well, we're putting this much money into Aldridge, so we got to at least let him see the court. I mean, he's on a veteran's minimum. So
right.
My counter to that argument would be there's zero risk in it. If you put in LaMarcus Aldridge and the numbers aren't what you want them to be, then put in Nick. You know, and obviously DeAndre Jordan's going to be the guy that's probably getting a good decent amount of the minutes, but you just roll with the guy that's working, you know, out of these 3, just roll with the 2 that are working, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, a part of me is kind of like you. It's where it's like, yo, this is such shameless ring chasing. The other part of me is also like, whatever. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge have been really good for a long time. They deserve the chance to play, competitive finals basketball because they are. They're closer to the end of their careers, both of them,
True.
Than they are to the beginning of it at this point. I don't think this is, put it this way, like, I don't think the Nets getting LaMarcus Aldridge is this needle shifting move that a lot of people are viewing it to be. Like, I think the Nets are still exactly what they already were. I think the Nets are the favorites in the Eastern Conference and potentially the favorites to win the finals if the Lakers aren't healthy or, depending on what's going on. But I mean, I don't think the Nets are. I don't think this makes the Nets like the Warriors with Kevin Durant. Put it that way. Like, I don't think this is a situation where they're just this invincible super squad. Like, they are still going to have to play defense in the finals. I think they are the favorites in the Eastern Conference, despite how well the Bucks are playing, despite how well the Sixers are playing right now. And I get why the guys are making it because they do have a shot to win the whole thing, and they're chasing it. I do though. I do wonder if this doesn't make that rotation a little bit worse. It kind of doesn't make sense if they weren't in the need of being like this. Would have made a ton of sense for Miami. Put it that way. Like LaMarcus Aldridge going to Miami made a ton of sense to me. Totally understand that. Even for the Lakers, it would have made a little bit more sense than it does for Brooklyn. But at the end of the day, like I just don't quite think it matters. Like I think Brooklyn.
Yeah, but if you're
that they're gonna, they'll figure it out. It'll work.
Honestly, though, if you're the Lakers. And because of the buyout, you really have your choice, in theory, between LaMarcus Aldridge and Andre Drummond. Which one would you prefer?
I guess Drummond because he's younger. Like, I think that's what it all comes down to for me. Somebody put up a stat, or somebody tweeted a stat of how bad Andre Drummond has been at finishing around the rim this year. And it really opened my eyes a little bit. It was kind of disturbing. Like, I started crunching those numbers, and it was like 58% or something like that. Like, it was concerningly low.
I wonder if I can pull that up.
But
hold on, let me see if I can find that.
But like Andre Drummond also is obviously one of the best rebounders in the league, and if he's being recruited heavily by the Lakers, like I do think he can fit the role there, and I think he's younger. So I think I would take Drummond over Aldridge at this point.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I'm trying to see. Okay, field goal by distance. Okay, 3 to 10 feet is probably what you're talking about. 33%, it looks like, for Drummond.
Yeah.
But if he's right at the rim, it's 61%. I'm trying to see if anything else changes. And field goal by distance. Oh, that was... Yeah, so it's like 39% between 3 to 10 feet. and about 54% under the rim, which isn't horrible. But yeah, the distance is, I mean, but if you're the team that needs a big, like, just sit them down there, you know? Like, if you're a team that needs a big like that and you're contending, you probably don't need that kind, like, a ton of scoring out of that area or position, you know?
Yeah.
So I get it, but either way.
It is pretty ridiculous with the Nets, just the amount of talent that are on this team. Like, if you had told me 5 years ago that you would have Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant on the same roster, like, I would think that you were just out of your mind. I've seen some people try and say that this is like the most talented team ever. I feel like that's a little ridiculous, but on paper, it's loaded. Like I said, the finals runs through them. Now, I think there are teams that can stop them. I don't think it's inevitable. But it definitely, to me, the East runs through them.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're most likely the I don't think anybody would argue they're the favorites, you know?
Well, there's a lot of depth now in the front court, too. That's the thing. I mean, Jeff Green is still there as well. Obviously signing Blake Griffin, which, has been mentioned a couple of times, even if he's not who he was, it's still
or was he hiding it this whole time? I mean, he hadn't had a dunk since 2019. In his first game with the Nets, he had a slam, and I was like, "Come on, dude! Like, are we about to have a Blake Griffin resurgence? Like, what just happened?"
Yeah, I mean, he played. The thing is, and he did. I don't know. I'm trying to like think of what the biggest weakness on the Nets is right now, and I guess it's still the center position, even with bringing Aldridge in. But I don't know, man. This Nets team is really, really good, and just the fact that the flexibility is different as well. Like they
just have to stay healthy. Yeah,
there's not a situation where somebody can just get into a bad matchup, where they have specifically the personnel with them. Like I gotta be like. The Lakers, I think, can beat anybody. And this isn't just me being a homer. I think the Lakers match up really badly with the Sixers. Where, like, I think the Lakers would match up better against the Nets. But I think the Nets might be better than the Sixers, put it that way. You know what I mean? But I think, like, with Ben, and, like, Ben can guard LeBron and Joel can guard AD. I don't think any teams in the league have that type of versatility. Where with Brooklyn, I don't know that the Sixers offense could keep up with Brooklyn, where I think the Lakers maybe could keep up with Brooklyn's offense, and play a little bit better defense. So it's going to be interesting.
Could the Nuggets now do it potentially against the Lakers because of Aaron Gordon?
No. I mean, I don't think anybody's beating the healthy Lakers in the West. As good as all these other teams in the West are, and for what it's worth, I think if Brooklyn was in the West, they'd probably run through it too. Like I think I think LA is still a team to beat. I'm not going to just jump off that cliff real quick, assuming health. I think the Lakers are still a team to beat. I think the Nets are clearly second, though. And they may be closer to 1 than they're closer to 3, put it that way.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that.
So in terms of that's really it in terms of the buyout market. I mean, we'll see what Drummond does. If Drummond goes to the Lakers, we'll see what exactly happens there. I mean, Aldridge was the other big one. Gorgui Dieng was the other big one. I thought Gorgui Dieng would be a really good consolation prize for anybody. I am a little surprised he's going to San Antonio. I'm still quite not over that one yet. But I mean, those are the big names here. We're not really expecting. I mean, Jabari Parker got bought out. We'll see if he gets picked up, but I'm not expecting him to fall on a contender anywhere. But I mean, I guess this is it essentially after the buyout system. Do you feel differently about kind of the hierarchy as we wrap this up? Do you think there's anybody? Is it Lakers, Brooklyn? Are we bound to just being there eventually? Should we fast forward the rest of the season, or do you think both of them can get upset?
I think the only thing with Lakers, and really, actually, I feel like both have the same narrative. Can they both stay healthy? If the answer is yes, they can both stay healthy, yeah, let's just forward the season. Let's get there. Let's see the matchup that we all want. But if they aren't healthy, then things start opening up for, like you were saying, the Jazz, the Suns, the Nuggets, the 76ers, the Heat, depending on how Oladipo gels. Like, it's all a health thing right now. And I have a feeling we're probably not going to see the stars, obviously, depending on the severity of their different injuries, but we're probably not even going to see them till the playoffs anyway.
No, I mean, LeBron, they said it's another 3 to 5 weeks minimum. AD is going to take his time. Embiid is maybe a week and a half away, but even that, I don't feel like the Sixers should be, especially with how well they're playing. I don't think they should be in any rush to bring him back.
Don't rush it. No, don't even rush it. Maybe a week and a half before the playoffs, get him in just to get a little conditioning going. what's the point of rushing it?
Well, and the Nets are taking their time with KD as well.
Right.
Now, granted, again, I think the Nets have a little bit more of a cushion when you have Kyrie Irving and James Harden to let Kevin Durant come back. But, I mean, everybody's staying afloat. It's going to be a fun playoffs. There's no doubt about that. And a fun second half. I'd be excited to see everything that's happening. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. We appreciate you guys as always. Leave us a review on iTunes. Good or bad, we'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, find us anywhere you find a podcast, Google Play Store, Amazon Music, Spreaker, Player FM, TuneIn, Spotify. We are there.
Yes, and be sure to check out our new YouTube page. It'll be up. Just search Drive and Dish NBA podcast. You'll be able to find us. There will be only like 1 or 2 videos there because obviously we're building this thing from scratch, but we're excited to have you guys along. Be sure to subscribe and obviously subscribe to the podcast as well.